With your host, Adrian Younge.
So here with Invisible Blackness, a podcast that means a whole lot to me. My primary objective is to really discover, illustrate, and illuminate the circumstances, the dogma embedded within the psyche of America, our world. In addition, the ideologies that are firewall to fortify the pillars of a polarizing way of thinking, a way of thinking that normalizes division. But when I say division, what am I really talking about? I'm talking about the separation of black and white, a division that really came into form during the 17th century here in America. America pioneered this concept. In time, we received a commitment, something I always say is better explained as the deferred commitment, the deferment of our equal standing in light of our invisible blackness. And to further pontificate, to further dive into this concept, I want to bring on a brother that was born and raised in Ferguson, Missouri, a brother who was one of 16 children, a trumpeter that has traveled and played with some of the greatest, from Jay-Z to Maxwell to Mary J. Blige, a brother that's won a Grammy Award for serving as a musical voice of Miles Davis. But, he's the type of brother that would really say, I'm not going to let a statue tell you how nice I am. He's the type of brother that was pushing social consciousness for years, especially with his beautiful album entitled The Musician, an album that he debuted with us with Jazz is Dead here in Los Angeles. Of course, I am talking about no other than Keyon Harrold. How are you, bro?
Man, I'm in a very, very interesting place right now. I'll just say that it's amazing to see you. It's been a long time, and it's always amazing vibrations to be in your presence and to talk to you, my brother. It's great to see you. Happy New Year.
Same to you, man. Same to you, man. It's I'm gonna get right into it, bro. It's interesting because you are a musician, you are an artist, just like I am. And because of what we do, we kind of create our own rules, right? We're pioneers, we create our own rules. Our job as artists is to tell people what's dope. We don't ask, right?
Mm-hmm.
And with that comes a struggle, because we're not popular culture because of the music that we make. What we are people that create legacies that are derivative of our unique visions. But due to recent events, my brother Keyon Harrold is not just a musician. I mean, you was never just a musician. You were never just somebody that played trumpet on the side. You were never just somebody that has an incredible album. You were never just somebody that is a good person. You have become pop culture. You have become pop culture due to a nefarious incident. So, I want to say, there's an untold amount of irreparable damage that white imperialism has done against the confidence of people of color. How does the incident with you and Keyon Jr., your son, further exemplify this privilege? Please talk to us about what happened and just take it, brother. Talk to us. People that don't know.
Got you. Thank you, Adrian. This, I would say, I'll start off by saying 2020 was one of the most challenging years on record for so many people, for me especially. I thought that after Christmas, I was going to be out of it. And we had already seen, the triple pandemic happen, being Black, going through, dealing with the racial issues with George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor and so many others. The idea of a pandemic. We thought, 2020 had reared its ugly head, but on the 26th, the day after Christmas, I'm in this hotel, nice hotel in New York City. Myself and my son, we had stayed up all night long, and we were hungry because we stayed up and just, we have a good time. My son's 14 years old, an amazing child, a beautiful soul. We were just hungry, playing video games all night. We watching a soul movie. Shout out to my man John Batiste. And the early afternoon, I'm like, you know what? Let's just go down and get something to eat. We want to try this restaurant downstairs. So we get ready and we head downstairs. The first thing that we see is somebody basically emptying a bag on the counter at the front desk, and I'm wondering why. And it's kind of weird, but no big deal. It was kind of chaotic in the lobby, but then I look across the lobby and I hear this person yelling at my son, "You stole my phone. He's got my phone." And I actually thought it was a joke at first, and I'm just kind of like, nah. This day and age, thank God for the ability to record video on our phones. I said, you know what? You just never know. Let me just start recording. So I start recording, and for what it's worth, we now have a viral video of, I call it a social, play on the beginnings of racial profiling. We usually don't ever see how it happens. A social dialogue on what happens and how people act that allows people to end up in jail, in prison. There's so many different things that happened in this video that we can usually never really show. We always talk about it. We always feel it every time. Right. As a Black person, you go outside, I feel like we put on this another layer of clothing that says, okay, I got to get ready because somebody's going to profile me today. Somebody's going to, assume the worst about me. Somebody's going to think that I'm a criminal today. But in certain establishments, you really feel like, you know what? It won't happen here. It couldn't happen here. Mm-hmm. So basically, long story short, this lady, her name is Mia Pensato, starts yelling at my son. And for some reason, she thinks my son has taken her cell phone. Here's the story killer. She found her cell phone. It was brought back in some form or way. We didn't steal her cell phone. As my son's dad, I can buy cell phones. I have two. He had one. And on the video, I explained it to each person. And I'll tell you how this idea of how the system happens. First of all, they see me. They see my son. They make a judgment that look at these Black people. Out of all the people who are at this hotel, though that guy is the one who stole my phone, even though me and my son had not even come downstairs. all day. It was 2:30 in the afternoon, and we just wanted to get box day brunch.
But she was yelling at y'all. You had on your fingers. You had like marks, like it looked like there was like blood or something.
Oh yeah,
like scrapes.
It's still my joint is not really healing well at all.
She, for me, my law background is as soon as I seen that, I saw assault, battery, false imprisonment, intentional infliction of emotional distress. You know what I'm saying? Like there's so much things that happen right there. But what really happened was capturing a predetermined prejudice.
Absolutely.
And this is something that has been going on for centuries here in America. And most people don't realize that America really pioneered this nefarious concept. America, because America developed as a slaveocracy, a civilization where we are built under the notion of manifest destiny, whereby we don't have slaves. We are built to have slaves. We are built to enslave. And because of that, we've been in a subjugated position under the rule of law with society. There's a stratification where we are on the bottom. And we've been dealing with this for centuries. I always say that we've been screaming for years. But right now, people are kind of finally starting to listen. Just like you said, people didn't have cell phones all the time. Before Rodney King, people didn't even believe this stuff was happening. And it's interesting because there's an apathy towards racial discrimination when you don't see it, when you're not around it. But when it's captured, there is the moment, that feeling where you can see society coming together and questioning what our leaders are saying and or not saying in reference to their deferred commitment, their recognition of past injustice, but the delay in our equality. And what's interesting here is with you, your son had to go through this, but not only your son, you had to go through this.
Absolutely.
And this is not the first time that these kinds of things have happened to us.
These things happen all the time. It's happening right now somewhere in America.
Yes, it happens with police. It happens with judges. It happens with prosecutors. It happens in the grocery store. It happens and it's been happening. And we have been the victims of vigilante justice with lynching, with, just being imprisoned. People don't understand the insurmountable handicaps that continue to inhibit our progress. But you, at this moment, along with your son, symbolize a whole new movement. You and your son are now popular culture in a way that you would have never expected. And when I saw this all going down, because obviously as a homie, I follow you on IG. I was like, are you kidding me? Did this really happen? And then the next day, I'm like, you know what? Is this really going viral? And then I'm seeing tens of thousands of people following you. I'm like, you know what? Like, look, in a bad situation, I'm always trying to pull out the good. And at least his voice is louder because of this. And now I see you on TV every day, bro. I see you all over the place. And I smile because she has, unbeknownst to her, given you a platform that you've been searching for to say what you got to say for years.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. So I definitely didn't intend on it in this way. Obviously, as artists, I think we have a certain ego that says that, listen, I want my music to speak for me, know, but sometimes, the music is here, the art form is here, but there takes a certain kind of special incident to give you the actual platform that you actually need. I mean, I've been talking about social justice for forever. Being from Ferguson, being a black man, being a young black man, and being a young black man who doesn't necessarily conform to what people feel like a young black man should be, as an artist, as a jazz musician, as a person who loves hip hop, a person who loves cool shit. You know, I don't really fit the image. I don't really fit the mold of what certain people feel a good black man should be like. But I'm here.
Well, it's interesting, the mold, right? My brother Todd Boyd always says that Black culture is not monolithic, right? We're not all the same.
Nah, it's a spectrum. We're a spectrum. We're a spectrum of shades. We're a spectrum of thought. We're a spectrum of talent. We're a spectrum of experience. You know, we're a spectrum of many things, man. Like, I mean, you're doing music on the highest level, but you're a lawyer. You know, it's so many different layers to this stuff. I'm a trumpet player, but I'm also a father first and foremost. Sometimes we get charged as, okay, if you play music, you must not say anything. If you play a horn, you must not talk. You must not. The only thing you should give us is your vibrations, your music, your sound, your intellectual property. But I don't want to hear you say anything. The minute you start talking, I want to limit what it is that you have to say, which is the biggest issue in the context of the question that you were asking about the idea of how does this incident with me and my son further exemplify this privilege of certain white people? The issue is our voice is minimized. In that video, I spoke the most clearly that someone could speak in context of letting people know that you have the wrong guy, you're barking up the wrong tree. Trust me, you got the wrong guy. And basically let us go. I spoke about the manager. Listen, the manager, you're so far above your jurisdiction. You got the wrong guy. I'm telling you, you're doing your job wrong. And I gave him an out to fix the scenario. What happens is the idea of anti-blackness comes into play. Whether that person is Puerto Rican or if she was a puppy, the fact that the manager chose to side with that person showed the anti-blackness of who me and my son was. That person could have allowed a scenario to be ended. It could have been de-escalated at that point, and we wouldn't even have to have this conversation. But you know what? We are where we are. He decided to go with his biases. The manager, Chad, from the Arlo Hotel, decided to go with his biases, and that has led to where we are now.
Well, you fit a stereotype, and there's an expectation. Okay, so let's think about this stereotype. Let's go back in time for a second. You know, blacks were not allowed to testify in court. Blacks were not allowed to read. Blacks were not allowed to vote. Blacks were not allowed to wear any kind of clothes that they wanted to. Okay? Blacks in many parts of the world were restricted to one religion. That religion was from the slave Bible. There was something called the slave Bible, where it omitted a lot of the Old Testament and it saved the scripture that speaks upon subordination. I say this all to say that we, Americans, have been subjugated to being chattel. Our framers never looked at us as equals. So So when you are not believed at that point, the issue is, well, if you were a distinguished white gentleman, would the manager have looked at you different? Well,
Yeah.
these are the things that are customary. This is systemic. These kind of things happen. These kind of things are expected. And that's why people are so tuned in to you and what has happened, because we've been saying for years, okay, that this has been happening. But if you can't see it, a lot of times you just don't really
You dismiss
believe
it.
it. You dismiss it. You dismiss it. And how do you have a right? How do you have a right as a black musician with dreads to say that this young lady is wrong? That this young lady that's yelling at you is wrong? You see what I'm saying? So like, this is part of our society, and it's something that we're dealing with. And also as black fathers, you know, we have to raise our children in the way where they have to see the world through a dual optic. It's something I like to refer to as double oppression. They have to see the world, one, through the same lens that mainstream America views us in. That's one. Secondly, they have to see themselves exactly how they see themselves in the mirror. So these are all the kinds of things that we have to deal with. These are all the kind of things that we have to teach our children about so that they are aware that you live in a former slaveocracy. You have to understand the rules that are derivative and how these rules impact you. Now, when we speak upon the concept of white and black, when we look at the etymology of the words, when you look at the definition of white, it'll say fresh as snow, the opposite of black, pure, colorless, unblemished. In a scriptural sense, purified from sin or sanctified. But when you see black, you see the words sullen, which is mischievous or malignant. Having a cloudy look or countenance, darkness, atrociously wicked, dismal, mournful, a Negro. This is what we've been raised around. And it's interesting to see how this all comes out in the media. And you've been speaking on this through your music for years and just kicking it with you. We be building all this kind of stuff. But to really kind of take this into music, we know that the blues came before jazz. We understand that the blues is catharsis. It's a release. It's our blackness. It's us saying, you know what? I'm flattening the fifth. I'm getting a little ill. I'm speaking to you with my own language. And then jazz took that to a whole new level. So in your opinion, how did jazz amplify the message of the blues?
To me, the blues is the down home, real, it's the crux of the matter. For me, the idea of the jazz, which is the son, the daughter, the derivative of the blues. Jazz is a way to individualize the struggle. It adds details. It adds context, deeper context to what's going on. The blues, you got, if you look at it in the most basic sense, you got 12 bars, you got 1, 4, and then 2, 5, 1. And it's real basic. But the jazz can take that experience. And again, how we talked about blackness being a spectrum, it allows us to have each individual stories. We all have our own struggles. Each one of our black struggles, each one of our black stories is very special. And I think jazz has a way of categorizing each one of our stories. We all didn't come from the same place, but we all have that same yearning to take down this system, block by block, chord by chord, note by note, word by word, lyric by lyric, to let people know that we're not less than. And I think the idea of jazz is a correlation to blues being, blues is the home base, but jazz lets you know that, listen, we all have a story to tell, and we need them all to change this system.
It's interesting. Like, what is the first form of music that came from America and changed the world?
It's the blues. Well, jazz.
Blues. Yeah.
I'll say the blues as a construct, but jazz has gone around the world.
Well, you're right. That's the thing, because jazz is, went over with World War I. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is what really it's the first real kind of American music to change the world. Obviously, it is a derivative of blues, but I say this all to say that I always say jazz is freedom music,
and the intellectual
exactly
advancement. When we think of Charlie Parker and Dizzy Gillespie and Clifford Brown and Miles Davis, just their intellect and high humanity has made it accessible to the world. That, you know what, I need this. This is high culture.
It's funny. So it's like, it's a music that really stood for a larger scale insurrection, because in Western society, we're supposed to fit in the box. You learn classical music, you're not supposed to play that note.
Nah.
But what happened was that I guess we had a disease with identity. I guess we thought that we could be intellectual enough to create something on our own, something that is arguably more complex than classical music. We took classical music and mixed it with blues and took it in a whole new direction. So, like, it's interesting how jazz over time has been subjugated in the same way that soul has, in the same way that R&B has, and moreover, even with hip hop. Because when you watch old movies with gangsters, what kind of music is being played?
Oh, it's jazz.
It's jazz. It's straight ahead jazz, right?
Mm-hmm.
But jazz represents our heartbeat. It symbolizes our struggle, and it exemplifies the anguish and affliction that we face. So it's like, you as a jazz musician, do we hear your Ferguson upbringing in your music?
We absolutely hear my Ferguson upbringing. We absolutely hear also my freedom from the constructs of growing up in a place like Ferguson. We know what it means when we say Ferguson is synonymous at this point with the word Mike Brown, with the name Mike Brown. It's synonymous with Black Lives Matter. It's synonymous with tanks and oppression. It's synonymous with racial profiling. It's synonymous with all of those things. And my music is a product of coming from there and also moving past that. And it's freedom music. Jazz is freedom music. Jazz is saying that this is what we got, but this is what I'm gonna make it musically. I can take these notes. I've been handed this card set, and I'm going to make this something beautiful. I'm going to give you something to live with forever. I'm going to give you something different to think about. You know why? Because you've never had to think about this before. As a Black man, when I'm playing this music, when I'm walking outside, there's two ways that I'm thinking. I'm thinking that, listen, I understand the chord structures. I've done the theory. I know the math of what's going on musically, but at the same time, the blues that I've gone through with my family, with my cousins, seeing my cousins go to jail, seeing my friends go to jail, being profiled myself, going to jail for nothing myself, I have a very unique experience. The issue, one of the things that jazz has the ability to do is tell stories and to give light to many other people. Sometimes as Black people, our voice is muted. And that's the problem in the idea of systemic racism, is that we're muted so easily. But this music that comes from our heart, you can't easily mute that. And jazz is the it's the form that I've been blessed with. So I will continue to use that and use my sound and my story to touch the masses, man.
So, coming from a family of 16,
Yeah.
I clearly remember when your mother passed. That made
Oh
me
man.
so sad. I'm sorry to bring it up, but it's
Man.
like in this situation as a father with what you're dealing with now and this whole new platform that you have now, how does your mother come into play here for you?
Man, my mother was, still is, she's my backbone. Just the words that she left me are valuable. I mean, I was fortunate enough to memorialize her before she left. On my album, The Musician, I was able to write music and to have her words be the thing that powered this composition. Um, Her words were always positive to me, and it was always to keep going, keep fighting. You never really know where you're going to end up, but I do know this, that God has blessed you and will continue to elevate you, and her word was always to just be prepared and be ready to speak, and that was going to help change people's lives. So my mom has always been that person to on my worst day tell me how great I am, you know?
That's
And,
beautiful.
and in the context of what my mom always was to me, which has made me be the father that I am, she's always been an advocate. So often, Black people, Black children, people of color don't have proper advocates. If I wasn't, I mean, I keep jumping back and forward to the story as to why we're talking right now. If I weren't there to advocate for my son, who knows what would have happened? What if they never found the cell phone? What if I wasn't there and I decided, because this happens often, that I'll send my son downstairs and I say, son, I'll meet you downstairs. I'll meet you downstairs, bud. If I'd have came down later and there was two people attacking my son, we'd have a very different outcome right now, you know?
Something interesting, man. Like, I talked to my mom. I'm lucky that she's still alive, and I talk to
Yes,
her about
indeed.
yeah, these kind of issues every day. And, me with kids, she says to me, when you were growing up and you would go somewhere, I'd always be so worried about whether you're going to be able to come back home. And it's not like I never got in trouble. She was always worried about me. And this is something that she was been recently telling me. And
Hmm.
she actually talked to me about this in reference to you, you
Wow.
know? And I was like,
She
it's
know
crazy.
we met, right? She knows
Yeah,
we
no,
met,
she knows.
right?
She's like, yo, I saw your boy on TV. I was like, what the hell? Yeah. So it's interesting, and but it is what we're in, is the times that we're in, and all we are doing is continuing to move closer to equality. And on that note, do you think there's any truth or credence in the concept of increased visibility of this predetermined prejudice, in the fact that it may actually deter such behavior by other Karens? I mean, what do you think here?
Man, I honestly hope that the truth in this tragedy that's happened with myself, that people can see this narrative, they could see their self as possibly being a Karen in this narrative, and that they can say, you know what? Let me research myself and see where my prejudices are, see where my biases are, and see that, you know what? That could have easily been me. But right now, I'm going to make a difference. I'm going to change, and I'm going to look at myself, and I'm not going to be the first person that says that, you know what? I'm going to believe everybody except for the Black guy. I'm going to believe
Hmm.
everybody except for the Black person. So
Yeah.
that's what it's going to take for change. The hearts and minds need to change for us to actually get out of this idea of, if a Karen says it, then it must be true. which we know that when we think about Emmett Till, when we think about the idea that Emmett Till was blamed for something that he didn't do and was killed for it.
Right.
And to this day, it is infamous. And what was interesting about the scenario of the SOHO Karen right now is, she went on a very, very famous show, Gayle King's show, and she basically she played down the idea of age. Age doesn't really matter. She said, you know what, I'm 22.
22, right.
And your son's just a guy. It's so much in that. There's so much nuance as to why she chose to use the word guy instead of a kid. My son is a kid, 14 years old. Emmett Till's scenario, the lady was younger than her. The lady was 21 years old when she blamed Emmett Till falsely. The problem we have as Black people is sometimes we're just not believed, and when we give the truth has a way of being marginalized. That perpetuates this system, and that's what needs to come down. We are the truth a lot of the times, and a lot of the times it is convenient. It's convenient to smother the truth. And that's the thing that perpetuates this system over and over again. And go ahead.
No, you go ahead, finish, man.
I was going to say that video, the video that I took, is such a prime example of how that happens. And when it happens, it's detrimental. It's detrimental to Black people. When Black people are not believed.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that you bring up Emmett Till, because with Emmett Till, those pictures of him in the casket is what really launched Jet Magazine. And Jet Magazine and Ebony Magazine, these were Black magazines that exemplified the beauty in Blackness. These are magazines that showed, hey, we are here also.
We exist.
And we exist. And it's interesting because right now you are doing the same thing all over the place. Outside of America, people are watching you and what you're doing. And I wanted to call you and tell you this, but I'll say it to you here on the podcast. I really, 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 really do hope that you use your platform as a musician to continue to push the narrative. I always say showbiz is a process of rejection until someone champions you, and you've never been rejected, but you have never been heard like this. You've always been the artist, which is the kind of artist we always want to be. Right. Now, whatever you do next is going to be heard with serious volume. You know what I'm saying? So, I just want to send you major love, and I want to thank you for being who you are, even before this incident. And I want to thank you for being who you are after this incident, because right now, when I see you, I see your pain and I see your smiles. Because nothing's new here.
No.
This is an incident. This is not new. It's interesting. Like with the pandemic, I always say, yo, we ain't tripping. We used to being broke.
Oh, man.
And we're professionals at being broke. And
we're going to create from that standpoint.
Exactly. We create from these inhibitions.
And that's where the jazz comes in. That's where the improvisation, that's where you know what, you can never marginalize me no matter what happens.
Exactly.
I'm going to continue to create and continue to push and continue to take the resources, whatever those are, and make them, and amplify them. That's what we do. That's what I do. you know?
Well, I'll close on saying bad circumstances shedding light on your genius as well as the injustice we face in America. I want to thank you for being part of Invisible Blackness. I love you, brother. I can't wait to be able to hang out with you again, man. And I can't wait to see what you're doing next.
Hey, man, brother, I love you too, and I'm so happy that you have me here, and I can't wait, to get back over to Linear Labs, my brother. This is Keyon Harrold, and you are listening to Invisible Blackness.